Q&A with the audience, and then at the end of that we're going to present the declaration that the rapporteur and myself and others have been working on throughout the conference, and we are then going to see if we can find consensus, agreement for a document to be adopted. So because people are still walking in and not all the speakers have arrived yet, what we thought we could do is begin now, and those of you that are punctual, you can be rewarded by getting to ask questions with the speakers who are present. So what I ask is that you try to be as kind of brief or as succinct as possible with your question, and address it to a particular speaker if you can, and then that speaker will get up and speak to the mic here. And so we'll hopefully in 40 minutes get through a number of questions, and then we'll move to a view of the declaration and a formal vote. So with that, there's a mic just up here, so if anyone has any question for any of the speakers that are assembled here, this is the time to do that. And while some of you are still deciding whether you have questions, we do have a set of glasses that have been found. So if anyone owns these or knows who owns them, then please come up and retrieve them. Now, we are starting a little late. We'll extend the timetable a bit and try and make up time as we go along. So with that, anyone have any question that they would like to address to any of the particular speakers who are up here at the moment?
The ringer has a question.
Yeah, well, I'll just start. And this question's for Joel. If he's got any ideas or any plans on where all of this new energy and where we're going with it in the future. I mean, it's great we've got, you know, cold fusion and electrodynamic, this and that. But really, where do you see us being at in like 10 years or 50 years? I mean, what's the end solution for it all, for the planet Earth? I mean, without oil, let's say. You know, what's the most promising technology out there that we could utilize to save us or something?
Okay, well, in my own opinion, I think many of the technologies in the genre that Tom Balone focused on last night, in what you might call in the 0-point energy class, or these magnetic generator technologies, that's where I think the real promise is here. Now, I've seen in my own experience some proof of concept devices or experiments. You might see them on a tabletop. There's a real difficulty in being able to have something like that available for display to the public or to, let's say, a member of Congress or something like that, because it's not very elegant, it's not very transportable, it's not easy to get the permission of the inventor to provide that for a public demonstration. Like, think how wonderful it would be that if we could bring a demonstrator right here to a conference like this. So rather than just listening to a secondhand experience, or us telling stories and asking you to believe that what we're saying has credibility behind it, you could see for yourself that, look, here's a device that will power up so many electrical devices and clearly has no visible input source that we normally associate with input power. I think that we're really close, and by really close, I think within the next couple years we're going to see the breakthrough announced and publicly demonstrated. Why that hasn't happened to this point, in my opinion, a lot of it has to do with the lack of understanding by the inventor community on what's really involved to get a technology from their sphere of research out into the commercial domain. I'll use as an example the gentleman that I referenced the other night, Roger Stringham, who's over on Kauai. And Roger is I think, the most advanced in the cold fusion genre with his sono-fusion technology. Wonderful researcher, very skilled in the science of his development, but knows nothing about how to promote his concept, does not know how to really connect very well with the business community, to get the Tiger team around him that not only has the vision and the resources and the specific skills to get something out there, but also that has the integrity to make sure that well, that obstructionist or selfish interests don't end up poisoning the whole affair, and that's happened pretty regularly. I want to introduce to you a real quick concept that I've been talking to the inventors who I've met of late of how to get the technology out there, and that is use an open source model to do this. And so what this will entail is for once we have a good demonstrator device that's fairly elegant and that can be easily demonstrated to the public or at a press conference, that we arrange for simultaneous press conferences around the globe. And let's say LA, Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club, in London, and in Tokyo. And all of those happen at the same minute, simultaneous press conferences. And concurrent with a launch massively on the internet of how to build that device, that demonstrator device. Now what that would mean is that the technology itself could not be patented. It immediately detargets the inventor from any obstructionist activity. It does not at all preclude the ability for millions of people to independently advance the technology into dozens or hundreds of useful applications where you could make a real business out of this. And that inventor will have more than enough opportunities for material support from consulting arrangements and such and such. So he may not become the Bill Gates of new energy, but something that he'll be well recognized and rewarded for his contributions. I think that's the best way to detarget a lot of the not so friendly activities that many of these inventors have experienced. I also think there's something about the sharing principle of open source that is very aligned with the spirit of what needs to happen, because quite frankly, if a country such as our own in the United States has a policy that if we are the first ones with the technology, if we use that simply to enrich our own nation and use it as an instrument of dominion rather than sharing it, it's just going to cause more of the separation mentality that's not in our best interest. So that's my suggestion. So,
very good.
Yeah.
So as more of you come up to ask questions, what I'll ask is if the speakers can kind of time themselves. There's a little clock here, and we try to keep the speaker answers to 2 minutes, so that way we can get as many questions in and answers back as possible. So I'll leave this up here, so if the speakers can try and keep it down to 2 minutes, that'd be great.
Hi, my question, I'm not sure who I should direct this to, maybe Timothy Wiley. Anyway, the question is relative to the fact that I've heard for years that the Tesla technology and other technologies of that sort pressed because our consciousness hasn't, our mass consciousness, our human consciousness hasn't raised enough to keep from killing each other with it. And so my question is, what do you think the prospects are that our consciousness will be raised enough that we can start using zero-point energy and the magnetic energy and all the other things we've heard about before it's too late?
Excellent. Anybody else? I didn't mean to cheapen your question. It was a very good question. But yes, of course, it is that. We are on a roll. The ringer will go ahead.
Fortunately, I had a top on it. I'd like to ask one of you who has such interesting first-hand experience with the ETs, either Dr. Frank or Hector. With your experience with ETs, what do you think that they would like us most to do? Especially in a group like this, is drawing up a document such as we're discussing, is that really going to make a difference from their point of view? Or are there better things that we could do from their perspective?
Good afternoon. I would think that I can only speak from personal experience. What Commander Val has requested of us and our group and our organization, which we've spread throughout the world, is that we maintain an open mind at all times. Not so open that our brains spill all over the place, but open to receive the and to pray for the discernment of spirits so we can tell the difference between fact and fiction. And from what the commander has given us, that we've given to our organization in our inner circle meeting, which is coming up next month in Las Vegas, is that the people not only maintain an open mind, but be able to retain that which is good so we can turn around and pass it on to others. And this includes every spectrum of information, of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, so we can help others to see the light. Now, many eons ago, God created the heavens and the earth. And in the Aramaic translations, as well as the Hebrew and the Greek, it says, darkness was upon the face of the deep. That was in contrast to the creation words. And all of a sudden, the Almighty spoke words, and he said, light be, and light was, just like that. The King James says, let there be light. The Aramaic says, light be, and light was. Now, you cannot shed any light whatsoever unless you have the light yourself. And when you receive the light, you receive the whole truth, pass it on to as many people as possible, because we're living in a generation when truth to whomever will listen to you. Thank you.
I would like to add just briefly to that the most significant thing is actually to release the fear that we carry of the impossible and the fears that we're not worthy to be part of this galactic federation that we're currently of rejoining.
I have a personal friend who's an electrical engineer, and he has finished an invention where in a box like this, first it was meant to be in a car to drive without gasoline, which I'm fully for, but he has changed, and it is now part of a generator, and it's a unit that you have in your home that creates all your electricity without adding but water to it. Now, this is a man who has done without for 10, 20 years and put everything in this invention. How can you get him to give it away to the whole? He has been dreaming of this to happen, so he finally can make a living. How do you convince him to just give it away to humanity? Whoever wants to answer this, please go ahead.
All right. Well, here's the first thing, and this is why we set up the New Energy Congress. It's that when claims such as what your friend is making, in order to make sure that they're more than claims and something that will attract the financial interest to move to the commercial domain, it needs to be assessed. It needs to be technically assessed by qualified engineers. The New Energy Congress has such people in its body that could go, if we know who the gentleman is and he's willing to have an integrous, independent assessment. And if our body of experts is convinced, you know, Tom Vallone's one of the people who's on the New Energy Congress, those type of people who know what the heck they're doing, if they give their stamp of approval to this, and it moves right up to the top of the database that's there, that database is being monitored very heavily by the folks who are interested in putting new investment into new energy technologies. It's also being monitored by the military agencies. We've been approached by the Navy, for instance, asking if they could collaborate with us on this database. There's a lot of horsepower behind getting it independently assessed. So what I would suggest you do is ask him if he'd be willing to contact us, and we do an assessment on it and move it from there. We're vitally interested in bringing financial resources to the inventors so they can get their thing launched into the public domain, and he will be materially sustained in that process. So I hope he accepts that invitation.
I will talk with him.
This is so new to me. If it weren't for my trusting Angelica and Michael, I wouldn't have come, right? Because they feel like stable, sane people, and I'm meeting a lot of really stable, sane people. You know, I mean, this weekend has turned me into a person who's not going to be afraid to talk about this stuff. Okay, I would say that. You know, 2 days ago I would say, no way, right? Okay, but I do have a kind of a funny question, and that is, how come all the ETs are either good looking, fair skin, green eyes, and except Hector first brought out the dark-haired people and with darker eyes, and how come they're not black or Chinese? You know, and so, because I'm finding myself walking around looking at every beautiful blonde-haired person as, are you an ET?
Because we don't want to frighten you.
Okay.
Actually, that's a significant question. I believe that there's a substantial inclination on the part of people in general to gravitate toward the Nordics and the attractive ETs. And the reason is quite simple. It's easier to relate to them, right? And of course, if they were to eventually come down here, they will give us the technology so we can be as good looking as they are. I mean, there's that. The point is that they're not the only groups by any means, and in fact, there are, the hardcore people who go to these conferences would know, there are the grays and gray derivatives, there are the insectoids, there are the reptilians, and I can assure you that they're not attractive in the supermodel sense. But this gets to a more important issue that I didn't mention today, and that is that I appreciate the goodwill, the good conscious, high conscious thinking about this, and it is appropriate, no question about it. And there's potential for some extraordinary things to happen, but I will caution you that if disclosure takes place a month from now, in the year or so that follows, you're going to learn some things which are going to make you feel very excited and stimulated and elated, and it's going to be great. You're also going to learn some things that are going to upset you a great deal. You need to do this. Trust me, right? It's life, right? It's like you marry somebody, you know, and there's some great things there, but you figure out later on there's some not so great things there. And if you're only looking for the great things, you're in for a shock. So just understand that. Different kinds of aliens, some of which are not so attractive, but also whose thinking and philosophies are not so attractive.
I also would like to add to that, Claudia. In my presentation, I talked about the Edens and about many different extraterrestrial groups coming to the planet at different times in our history, coming from many different places. Now, I think one of the reasons why we talk about the Nordics so often is because the Venusians basically have the biggest presence here on the planet, and they're our next door neighbor. And so that, along with ETs from Orion and some others, also Nordics, have a very strong presence. But they're by far not the only ones. And even within our own solar system, for example, on the moon Ganymede, we have groups that are Asiatic looking. And we have inner Earth groups that are very Asiatic looking with the darker hair and the darker features, the slanted eyes. There are many different races out there with flatter, wider features with a frame that is wider and not necessarily tall and looking just like one of the models out of Vogue. I mean, really, it goes across the spectrum. Skin colors, we find all the shades of the rainbow practically out there, but because there's not quite as much contact with some of these other races, because they're a minority, we don't get very much information out there. I mean, we don't get very much information out there really about the Nordics, who are here in such a great presence and who are our next door neighbors. So for these other races, even less information is shared. But let me assure you that they come in every body shape imaginable. And contactee Alex Collier says that if for yourself you want to determine what your where your genetic history lies with extraterrestrials, you don't actually look at eye color and hair color, you look at body type. And I think that's an interesting idea. And there has been work done by many physiologists and biologists studying the different body types of humans on the planet, the many different shapes of the body, going from a pear shape to, broad shoulders, skinny hips kind of thing. There are all these different body types, and according to the Andromedan contactee, that has to do with the ET root race for what you have the most DNA from. So, thank you.
Do I have your permission to add something? Yes. I'm going to do it anyhow. In 1973, I had the privilege of being invited aboard the Starship. How many of you received one of those charts I gave away yesterday of the Starship? 14 miles long, point to point. It's a floating city. When I was a little boy in Sunday school, they used to sing, Jesus loves the little children, red and yellow, black and white. Remember? Well, the writer of that song would have a hissy if she was ever on the Starship. I saw people, races of people from the outer galaxies, red, yellow, black as ebony, and white as a sheet of white paper. I saw beings who were striped, some who were polka dot, some who were actually transparent. You could see their bones all through them. And they had one thing in common, the love of God toward the people who they were ministering to. Thank you.
I will admit that I believe in UFOs and ETs, but I also admit that if I were confronted in person with a three-dimensional figure right in front of me, that I might be kind of shocked. And I'm wondering, Steve, what are the things that we or anybody else can do to prepare ourselves for the materialization of the extraterrestrial presence on our planet?
Well, when the ETs formally engage us, I mean, they're not going to appear in our bedrooms. I mean, that's going to be the good stuff. I mean, they'll... No, but I'm actually making a different point. They're already turning up in your bedrooms, some bedrooms, okay? But with a formal kind, when they formally engage the human race, I think there's a good chance, and this raises a very interesting point. I believe for those who are having bad contact experience, and there are people having bad contact experience, I'm sorry, you know, that's just the way it is. You can't organize reality to suit your philosophy. I think the best chance that they have is disclosure. I think when disclosure takes place, I have a very hunch that the abductions, the forced contact will end. Because I'm telling you, the only person that has ever really gotten this across, I think, in a way that you really grok it, is Whitley Strieber, who has described what it's like to have one of those entities turn up in your bedroom. I think it would be cool about it, you know. It would be, hey, that's cool. But the fact is, if one of those turned up in my bedroom, every strand of my DNA would immediately go into code orange. Okay, I mean it would be, and there would be hormones operating in there that had been in storage for like 20 or 30 years, and they would suddenly turn up, and I couldn't stop it. It would be an automatic reaction, and then of course I would calm down, and we would engage in philosophical discussion of Kantian reality. So the point is what can you do? What you do is read and understand. Particularly read the good books about the abduction phenomena. Read Mack and read Watkins and read Jacobs, and get comfortable with the idea. But overall, if you're not currently a contactee or abductee, they're not going to turn up in your bedroom. Okay, you're okay, right? Like me, I'm okay. If you're worried, come. They're not showing up. All right. So don't worry about that. But if you're a contactee and you're concerned, what happens if they show up again? Well, that's an interesting issue. And I believe the best way is to engage it, hypnotize, get all the information, get really into it, and you'll feel better. I believe knowledge and truth always works out for the best, though it's never perfect.
I'd like to add to that I think that what the conference represents is a changing of paradigms in relationship to how we think of extraterrestrials. Because the media has done such a huge job in putting out those fear-based pictures about abduction. But we're telling you that actually the majority of ETs out there are loving and kind and respectful of you. So you have to change your mindset now to encompass that idea that you can have beautiful, positive contact. And from my own experience, when I had my first physical contact experiences, when I was in their presence, there was so much love exuding that I couldn't do anything but exude love back. There was nothing frightening about it. It was just the opposite. It was so transformative. And so I think what we have to do is prepare through meditation, through expanding our consciousness. And this is what gets us to take this next step. And also swimming with the dolphins. We have this beautiful species on the planet who can help us to expand our consciousness by looking in the eye of another sentient being who is so different than us and yet so loving and so kind and so giving. And it is allowing ourselves to have these kind of experiences that will help us go to that next stage of being ready for broader contact to happen. Thank you.
My question is about preparing for contact in economic terms, because it seems like once there's contact, what people will quickly realize is that most everything they know, all the skills, their profession, is obsolesced. You know, our industries are kind of like become the grass skirt industry in a small island. Our knowledge is completely surpassed by what they know. And even if we personally, and our money, all of our savings, we have no galacto dollars, all we have is like stone wheels, you know. And so even if an individual is comfortable with themselves and has that confidence that things will be all right, still the anxiety that this produces among everyone else in town would be disruptive. And so I'm wondering if people have ideas about how the community and how the individual prepares for the economic dislocation by entering a completely different system.
I love this question. It puts us so far outside the box. It's where I'm at home. The idea that we have to pay for energy, that we have to pay for food, that we have to pay for water is absolutely foreign to societies not of our planet. There is so much resource in this world, in this galaxy, in this universe, that the idea that one being would withhold from another being the basics of life is completely foreign. We're probably the only intelligent beings in the universe that do this. I look at it kind of like Hurricane Katrina. When it came through, everybody said, oh, that's such a terrible thing. I didn't think so. I thought it was wonderful. I mean, not that people get hurt, but it's wonderful that everything gets wiped clean and everything gets rebuilt new. It provides jobs, it provides industry, it provides progress and future. I think sometimes we sit too long on our laurels. We sit too long on the things that we've made with our own hands. And when another society comes in and says, can you think of things a little differently? Can you think of yourselves as earthlings instead of Americans and Germans and Japanese and Mexicans? And can you learn to live on a little blue marble in the middle of cold space as one, helping one another? Yeah, it's a completely different economy. And I, frankly, am looking forward to it. Yeah.
This is an extremely important question. It strikes at the heart of exopolitics. One of the fundamental functions of exopolitics in this era is not just to get the government to disclose. It is, in fact, to start educating people to the fact this is going to come. One of my good friends once said that, you know, Steve, who are you? You're John the Baptist. That's what you're doing. You're just proclaiming the coming. Okay, fine. That's what he did. Preparing people for the coming, right, so they would be able to handle it. Well, the government is terrible about that. They don't prepare people for much of anything. And so the fact is that unless we prepare ourselves, then we're on our own. So to the extent that this information gets out, that we know there's going to be a disclosure event, that we talk about it, we explore it, the better. But, you know, but it needs to get to the academic level. We should be talking about this in Harvard, Stanford. We should talk about this at the think tanks. We should be having some town hall meetings and so forth. But of course, they're not going to allow them to do that. They're going to block it. Because if they allow this kind of preparation and discussion, that is acknowledging there's something there which breaks the embargo. They can't do that. So until the embargo ends, you have to be utterly stupid until that very moment. This is government and loco parentis, which is one of the fundamental problems of the modern state in America now. The government decided to take over as parent. You are their child. Therefore, you don't even have a right to consent because you are not consent. And so, yeah, I could spend 10 hours here listing what you might do. I told you in the presentation, be short oil and long gold. In London for years, they have bets down on the ET reality. Up until a few years ago, it was 1,000 to 1 on the British government acknowledging ET presence. They got so much bets at 1,000 to 1 that about 3 years ago, they lowered the odds to 100 to 1. But let's think about that. If you were to put $1,000 down for the remainder of this year, in 2008 and 2009, and disclosure takes place, it's 100 grand. Now that's a lot of preparation there, isn't it? Right? There's a lot you can do, but in terms of worrying too much, you'll be surprised. There is such a vested interest in all the institutions in the world in maintaining their integrity in post-disclosure. I assure you that if money becomes worthless and everything else, it becomes worthless for the rich and famous just as well as it does for us. They don't want that to happen. The energy industry is not going to go broke. They will be selling you, you know, 0-point energy at 1 cent, no, 1/10 of a cent to the dollar, okay, and you will be quite happy to buy it. And because it's only 1/10 of a cent to the dollar, you're going to buy a huge amount more of it. You'll be building things in your house and, you know, buy 4 electric cars and charge it up, and they'll still do well, but you'll have very, very cheap energy. And they will adjust, and they will own the systems and the larger plants. No energy oil executives, no, you know, people in the auto industry are going to go broke because we suddenly enter the new era. They're going to do just fine. What we need to worry about is how well we're going to do. And we will do as well as we demand full disclosure, maximum transparency, and the right to influence the post-disclosure policy. If the government comes to you and says, the ETs are here, we didn't tell you before for national security reasons, we're telling you now, we've told you, now get the hell out of our way, we'll get back to you in about 20 years with more information. And if the American people, to their ever-ending disgrace, say, okay, we'll buy that too, then they deserve everything that comes down on their head after that. So get ready to stand up when the time comes.
I would like to add something to your question about economics. If we remember that economy, if translated from Greek, means management of the household, I think the best thing to prepare for accepting guests is to make your household beautiful. And I think that if we were to witness the arrival of a massive force of extraterrestrials today, they might entertain quite a degree of doubt as to whether this planet is inhabited by intelligent beings at all. Because the species that are defecating in their own drinking water supply, that are wrecking the only planet they can live on, would probably not look as intelligent to them as we would like to produce an impression. So I think and all these species and beings living in concrete apartments that look like stone wouldn't produce on them a very intelligent impression. So I think that if they came and they witnessed Earth as a garden of paradise with happy people living in their paradise gardens, they would have a quite different impression.
I believe that one of the ways that we can get ready for this is go into the heart. And that's been a message that's been shared with us with many different connections with ETs and beings that are inner earth, and also plants and other intelligent beings that live all around us. And so I would just like to hear if any of you have any ideas about how we do that, so that we have a signature of love that precedes all contact.
Every sentient creature has a heart. The heart of the matter. We've all got hearts. ETs have hearts. Angels have hearts. Every entity has a heart. For the human being, the heart is the link. The heart is the link between the world that is created and the world that is being created. So, if we come from always open, vulnerable, we're home and dry.
I've been asked to add something. It's on my heart to add it. Source of creativity. The part of the revelation that's most wonderful for me is the concept that the 528 hertz frequency is the love vibration. It happens, if you do the research on it, it happens to be at the center of the entire electromagnetic color spectrum. So as above, so below. So it's at the center of the rainbow. At the center of the rainbow is the color green. At the center of the color green is this frequency, and of course your heart chakra is color green. So we now have the first scientific evidence that strongly suggests that the center of your heart is connected exactly, as you say, to the source of creation, to the center of the universe. And that, again, that core resonance and emotion is love and joy. There's an interesting combination, it seems, so that when we're in love, we're in joy. When we're in joy, we're really heart. So the concept now that we put forth that frequency in every possible way into the waters of the world, and we're all water vessels again. So the concept that that could be instrumental in opening the portals, opening the floodgates for this whole transformation, this whole spiritual renaissance unfoldment with the opening of the heart. And so that's why when I conceived of the three, originally there was David Schmidt, who's the CEO, creator of this thing called the LifeWave energy patches. You might have seen them. They're like water-containing amino acids that have been impregnated with vibrations that then the water simply transmit that vibration inside, and the physiology of the body changes. He came to me and he says, you know, you want to participate? And I said, well, I thought the best way I could participate was to put that frequency of love and the sacred geometry of the love and its, you know, collaboration, that perfect circle of sound, frequency, vibration, so that all the waters would be impregnated with that blessing. And then that's one of the things that we're doing here on the island, is we're literally putting that frequency, 528 hertz, into the steam vents. And right opposite where we are now on the other side of this island is Pahoa. And we have there access to about 150 active steam vents in the breadth of the earth. And we know that that lava, because we're connected to Volcanoes National Park, is spilling lava into the most magnificent body of water, the superconductor that the planet has, which is the Pacific Ocean. So we now are actually adding that, and many of you people know others, colleagues, who are actually putting those frequency vibrations and prayers into the universe in numerous new ways, technologies that have been advanced in the last couple decades. Well, that's one of the things that we're doing. The energy signature, I think, based on a conversation that we had previously in answer to your question from my perspective, is that this innate unification, this innate unifying vibration that we have in our hearts that connect us interpersonally and spiritually to the divine, that is something that literally at every moment is required for us to choose. And so I think the message is, what can we do most in order to facilitate that social transformation and people opening their hearts fully and consistently? And to me, it's simply, like you said, that you're going to be brave from now on. You're not going to accept anything but the excellence and that love in relationship, coming from a loving space, and simply accepting that as virtually exclusively the vibration and behavior that you want to accept in the people that you play with and have relationships with. I think that that is going to explode, and I think that the best way, therefore, to transmit this whole spiritual, loving transformation of the planet is going inside, into the heart, recognizing the divinity, the solidarity of that frequency, and then accepting nothing short of that. That you know, you have your intuition, you know when people are vibing on it, and you know when they're not. And that it's a choice as to whether you choose to play those old games of deception or celebrate the loving reality and that vibration of divinity.
Thank you. 日本からこの会に出席できましたことを心から感謝します。
We appreciate that we came to this conference and we are having a good time. So we appreciate all of you for us to be here.
今日メッセージで聞こえてきたんでお伺いしたいんですが、E.T. が地球に来られた時、彼が地球に捕らえられた時点で大統領のことも知っていると、そして捕まったことが成功であるということを金星の方から伝えられてきたんですけど。
This morning she received a message from somewhere above, and when the ETs arrived on Earth, he knew that the crash on Earth was successful mission. The being from Mars told her.
金星に届けられた地球のメッセージは水星の地下から木星の使者に届けられ、土星にて計画を進められる、ようになっている。金星に届けられた地球のメッセージは、
And the message from the Earth sent to the Venus will conveyed from the underground of Jupiter, then which will be preparing for the next plan for the what's the planet, the biggest planet on the
Saturn.
Oh, Saturn, yes. The plan in a Saturn.
で、地球そのものはすでに宇宙にコントロールされており、
The Earth itself is controlled by the universe.
すべてのテクノロジーの遅れを地球に伝えるために苦労している。
And the universe is having a problem that the delay of the technology on Earth is well. Let me see. Yeah, they want to tell that the delay of the technology advanced and developed on Earth is kind of slow.
まずそれぞれが自分のグループ、宇宙との調和を持たなければ。
So each one of us need to communicate with the universe by themselves or by each group have to try to harmonize the universe by ourselves.
他の宇宙との交流は難しい。
Otherwise, it's difficult to communicate to the universe.
で、地球は金星の平和的な解決を地球に対して金星は平和的な解決をしようとしている。
Venus is waiting for the condition the Earth will have any problem peacefully. I mean, peaceful condition.
宇宙は一つですから、このつながりがわからないと始まらない。
So the universe is only one unity. So unless you know the relationship to each planet, you won't have the result or clue to understand the situation.
って言ってきたんですけど。
That's the message she received. Sorry, my translation is kind of fuzzy, but...
No, it was fine, and we want to thank you very much. And would you thank your source very much for the information? We really appreciate it. And I think what it does is that it underlines the fact that we are all individual souls. We're all growing in maturity. We're all moving into new dimensions, our new bodies, our new understandings. But it's a very individual thing, and I think your source brought that out in a way that I think was very important. Thank you.
I would like to take an opportunity here too as well. First, I'd like to apologize for speaking very, very fast in my presentation by necessity, but it was somewhat disrespectful of our visitors from Japan and Mexico, and I apologize for that. Let me just mention this. I know of the great interest in the subject in Japan, well known. And I would very much like to see an exopolitical movement develop in Japan. I think it would be appropriate. Even so far, and I'd like to see Japan put some pressure on the United States, though I know it would be very difficult for it to do. But I could even imagine Japan being the disclosure nation. It's one of about 10, I think, that could do it. And one of the reasons is that Japan is one of a very couple of nations in the world that formally announced war and a standing army, which I think is non-trivial. So it would be not unreasonable for Japan to take the initiative here, and I think it would be well received as a bridge between, well, the two major, the West and the East, really. It sits between them in a way. And so please convey my thoughts on that back to your friends in Japan.
I think their point, though, and this is also something that we're seeing in a previous question, and that is about the economic impact, and you're conveying the lack of technology advancement. Both of these relate to things that are specific that every individual can do, and this is why I attempt in my lectures to give very high technology information, but water it down so you can all understand it, because exactly what you're sharing with us is my understanding that that's the deficiency that human beings on the planet. There's plenty of ET examples. I know 2 inventors, for example, that have had missing time and then started to have dreams about technology and started to invent. And getting that invention to the market has been a big, big challenge because investors don't understand it, people don't understand it, and the application for new technology oftentimes requires creativity. How do you use a thing that turns around with no input? That's where scientists come in. So if every one of you can align with a scientist you know, or a professor who needs education, people that you know have intelligence and should be aware of emerging energy sciences, open their mind to the fact that these technologies are very important for our survival. And the economic impact, it'll be wonderful. Because what could be greater than having your own small portable generator on your car, in your home, and in any space plane or airplane that we fly. This is our destiny, and it's been predicted for 2050 already. So.
わかりました。私はこの仕事が好きです。This is all about consciousness. This energy thing, this connection between ETs, the frustration of ETs with our ability to develop their technology. Those that are hoarding that technology as they get it in their hands. The inventors who get these incredible technological downloads of pure technology and then try their best with earth materials and earth techniques and their public school educations to put the darn things together and make them work. Yes, it's frustrating. But it's all about consciousness. And even those of us that don't have the ability to put the high technology together, add our consciousness to those who do, our intention to those who do, and then it will happen. Domo arigatou gozaimashita.
Aloha. First, I want to thank everybody for this great conference. I'm learning so much. It's fantastic. I have a Hollywood question for you, and that's my background. I've worked television, movies for years. My take on some of these fear questions are that people are not going to be that afraid, that starting in the 70s with Lucas and Spielberg putting out, Close Encounters and all the Star Wars movies and Star Trek on television, people are, I think, ready. I don't think they're going to be, this is my opinion, I'm curious what you think. I don't think they're going to be that afraid. Today's Mother's Day, I called my mother in Chicago to say, Happy Mother's Day. I told her where I was. She's not the most progressive person, but she said, oh, I want to hear all about that. She's not like, that sounds like nonsense. I wanted to hear people's opinion on that. I also wanted Hector or Frank or whoever had contact. I've wondered if people like Spielberg were taken up 30 years ago or 35 years ago and being given information, or where, did some of it happen that way? I mean, how did it get chosen that these guys are the guys that started breaking it down for? Because talk about consciousness, aliens are in everybody's consciousness. Anyway.
There was a particular ET woman, an incarnate ET woman behind the Spielberg situation. Spielberg, to my knowledge, didn't go up in a ship, but there was a woman behind that who knew all about it.
Came down to him?
I know she was an incarnate, like many of us incarnate.
Okay.
There's a document called the Report from Iron Mountain. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's fascinating to read. It's supposedly really a fraud, but it really isn't, because when you read it, you realize that everything that's taking place on the planet, including aspects of the extraterrestrial phenomenon, has been written as a political sociopolitical economic agenda, literally for substituting in a new world order a substitute for standard militarization in the form of what's called non-lethal warfare, and creating different kinds of enemies, including those that all of humanity globally would be recognizing as such, and then unifying a global economy around. One of those that was reported in the report from Iron Mountain was the extraterrestrial threat. So that the concept that the people all over the world, if faced with, you know, a significant alien presence, those that have been in power would likely utilize Hollywood as it has been utilized largely for disinformation. That leaves the independent filmmakers in having to do their work to really make up for the propaganda. But all efforts with the status quo would be directed at inducing fear, because that's virtually, as you know, the opposite of love. And that's where we need to be, in love. And you know, draw your own conclusions about Hollywood.
But that's why I wondered, like, Close Encounters is the opposite of that. Close Encounters is their friendly,
yeah,
you know, I mean,
but there's a Hegelian dialectic. There's the thesis, there's the antithesis, and then the synthesis. Basically, it's behavioral science, indoctrinational, culturalization, mind control. You have the good aliens, you got the bad aliens, you got people not knowing what, they get confused with all of the sensory motor overload and all the other issues in life that people have to deal with. They leave it to the government to decide. And the government, you see what's taking place in the Middle East. The decisions are not loving, they're insensitive, they're not for humanity, they're obviously for profiteering off of humanity's suffering and the degradation of this planet. People that are in charge. So if it happened today, my bets would be on them trying to use whatever media source they have, including Hollywood, with producers like the secret Central Intelligence Agency propagandist Steven Seagal, who I know personally as such. And basically these types of people would be used to the max to continue the deception, induction, and the manipulation.
This is a very, very important point. One of the absolute important lessons that has to be taken from this whole episode. First, here's one. As soon as possible, or when you look back at the 20th century from 47 on, you have to look at everything that happened in the context of being a massive propaganda campaign. Propaganda centered on two fundamental lines. Tacks. One was the Cold War, right? So you had to have a propaganda against the enemy there, and also propaganda for, quote, our dealing with it and how we would deal with it, to support the entire nuclear enterprise and everything else. And then you had a separate track propaganda regarding the ETs. Huge, massive program. Will take a long time to disseminate it. The whole business about the Brookings Report, you know, the constant referring to that Halloween prank of Wells, H.G. Wells, not H.G. Wells, Orson Welles. You know, everybody got upset because on the radio they heard there was a, you know, Martians were coming down. So there you go. Obviously, human beings cannot handle Martians, you know, in the world. It's ridiculous. If you were to turn on CNN right now and they decided to put on a little prank, right, and they would say, well, nuclear bombs have gone off in a number of cities, but it was just a prank. Obviously, you'd get upset. So it's a meaningless point, but they raised it over and over again. All propaganda, right? Designed to instill the sense that, well, we can't handle it, we can't deal with it, right? And the lesson is this. When disclosure takes place, this will be understood. The American people, pretty much all the first world people, because this took place in other countries, are going to be able, they're going to find out that, in fact, this kind of propaganda was instituted in the first world by free nations. And it was incredibly successful. They're going to have that opportunity to see it and know it. And therefore, they're going to have the opportunity to stand up very clearly and say, that is never going to happen again. We're never going to let you do a national, global propaganda number on us. It just isn't going to happen. So that's the opportunity. We must not let that opportunity go.
We have time. question and one more quick response from the speakers, if anyone does have a question that they need to ask.
I've read quite a few channeled books from ETs. I'd like to meet a real one, but I guess it's the next best thing right now. It seems that there's quite a number of sources out there that are saying that the ETs are totally aware of our political situation, and the ones who normally would be not interfering, not trying to save us from ourselves until we showed that we could, you know, had the consciousness to work with them and step into this new world, that they have gotten permission from the celestial hierarchy or spiritual hierarchy to go beyond that, given the situation in which they're so ignorant and the information is still being suppressed, and that there is a plan to actually overthrow the Bush administration. It maybe wouldn't look like that, but you know, maybe some information would come out where they'd have to step down, and other cooperating governments, and instill people who were able to cooperate and bring this whole thing about without having total disruption of the economic and you know, way of life. I'm just curious to see if any of you have a reaction to that. I know that they say that some people say there are people in place on Earth, including ETs and humans, ready to step in when this happens. Of course, some of you may be them. We don't know. You probably wouldn't admit it. But I'm just curious to see what you have about that. It makes me feel better anyway, considering all that's been said.
I'll be covering that in some detail in my talk in a few minutes.
Look, this is kind of in my value. I'm becoming ubiquitous, I'm sorry. There's a pill I can take. Let's just put it this way. Given the nature of politics today, it does not surprise me at all that people would look to extraterrestrials above or amongst us to step in and take care of some things. I don't blame anybody for doing that. I suspect, however, that that's probably not what is the reality. That they're not going to step in, they're not going to manipulate. They are, in fact, pursuing an agenda that is as ancient as our whole solar system. I think that the things that are unfolding for very terrestrial reasons. And now this segues me in one of my pet subjects. Very quickly, there is some major change coming, based upon my assessment of Washington, where I do nothing but sit there and watch cable news all day long for you, so you don't have to. And this is a bipartisan assessment of what is going to happen this year, based upon Washington calculus. If I'm wrong, sue me. But if I'm right, send me lots of money. No. This is what's going to happen. This is a nonpartisan statement. Over the next couple of months, Wolfowitz, Gonzalez, and Cheney are going to resign. Cheney will be the third to resign sometime in the early summer. He will do this before the hearings begin. The hearing testimony is being taken now, privately, in the basements of those buildings. They're taking testimony from whistleblowers from umpteen different issues. Once they gather that, then they decide which of that testimony they're going to put up in front of a hearing on camera under oath. And then it works its way up, and these will start happening. They certainly intend to subpoena people for those, including the Vice President. He cannot do that. It's simply not possible that he can go in front of a hearing under oath. They can play the executive privilege game, but it's already been done. So in order to protect himself and the administration, he has to resign, lawyer up. So that's why he would have to resign. There's no way. Plus, there's never been a vice president in history that had an easier out, you know, as far as resignation, you know. I'm not feeling well. I think I need to. Sure, it's okay. I mean, he's always died 7 or 8 times in office already and been brought back to life. Whatever, it's an easy out for him, so that has to happen. Others will resign for the same reason. You're seeing a little of that now, but it hasn't gotten underway in earnest, but I assure you it will. When he resigns, then the House and the Senate, as they did with Nixon, will appoint a new vice president under a 51% vote, technically appointed by the president. It'll be a person of stature, calm demeanor, well-liked, nonpartisan, more or less than partisan, and with no aspect. caretaker VP. As soon as that's done, this is harking back to the Agnew situation, if you remember this. There was no way they could begin proceedings against Nixon until Agnew was gone. The impeachment process against Bush will begin. The way that works is, it's not so much the impeachment that counts, it's the Senate that counts. So what happens is, I'm almost done. As the impeachment process moves forward, they start counting the votes in the Senate opposed to conviction. And as soon as that number drops below 34, then the president has to resign, and they'll send somebody up. I think they're going to send his father. If it doesn't, then it tends to hang. With Clinton, he stuck it out because those votes were never there to convict. He knew that, plus he didn't believe the impeachment was just. That won't be the case this time. And so I believe sometime around September, October, those votes are going to shrink below 34, and George Bush will resign and leave office. A new vice president will be, the other vice president will move up and a new one will take that place, and you'll have basically a caretaker situation for the rest of 2008. This is my assessment. I'm pretty sure about it, though ultimately the resignation of a president is substantially in doubt. But this is what's going to happen. It's going to be a very tumultuous year, extraordinary year. But that's why there is, for this year, the Democrats, by the way, I'm pretty sure plan to disclose in the next administration, which they think they're going to win. All right. That's what Richardson is all about. That's what Podesta is all about. But it's possible it could happen sooner, and the reason would be this. The current administration, and the entire neocon revolution, the project of the American century, is about to be completely dismantled. Scattered to the wind, disgraced, destroyed. It is a terrible legacy that's coming. It's going to be very tough. One way to mitigate that is to change the subject. And so it's possible that people around the door say, look, be the disclosure president. End it. That will change the subject, change the legacy, and prevent much of this from happening. That's fine with me. I don't care who ends this truth embargo. If it's George Bush, fine. It needs to end. And those who say, well, we want to end it when we have our person in and our agenda, This is global, this is worldly, this is transcendent. It cannot be held hostage to any political agenda. So I support his intent, but if George Bush wants to do it tomorrow, he has my vote.
Let me just add my response to that question and use that as a segue into what we're going to do next. I think what the ETs are looking for is direction from us. Those of us who know what's going on, who are aware of all the forces, the interests, the practices, the denials, the deceptions, those of us that are well enough informed about it, ETs are looking for direction for us. And I think what we've done over the conference is actually try to build together a vision, a declaration, a statement of intent. And so that's what we've been working on, and that's what we are going to look at right now. So with that, let me thank the panel of speakers for coming up and answering your questions. As the speakers make their way down and join us in the audience, what we're going to do now is actually project onto the screen and go and scroll through and read the declaration as it's been revised based on the feedback we've gotten from the speakers, well, firstly from the audience in terms of a written questionnaire, then from the speakers in terms of their response to the audience's response, and then last night or yesterday afternoon we had a session with all of the audience who gave more feedback on what was presented and what we discussed. And so what happened was that Hugh Matlock acted as the rapporteur, assisted by Selena Keys, and they've come up with a draft that we then worked together, myself and with Hugh, to come up with the final wording that we think actually integrates all of the suggestions that have been made so far. So we think that this is a document that represents the spirit of the conference, and while we do use a consensual model here, we're using a model which basically means that we try to get agreement as broadly as possible. Now, consensus doesn't mean unanimity. That doesn't mean that you agree to everything that's there. What consensus does mean is that you do not object to anything that is there to the extent that you the document. So what we're going to do now is read through the document. We're going to have it scrolled up here, and I'll read through it slowly so that you can all see what's there. And basically what we're asking you to do is, as we go through it, if there is anything that you object to the extent that you would block this document, that you would think that it's so objectionable that you would block the document, then afterwards you'll have an opportunity to voice that. And if not, then we can actually move to a formal adoption of the document. So I ask Hugh to project onto the screen what is the revision that we've come up with now, and I'll read through it. We, the individuals and groups participating or supporting the Earth Transformation Movement, are a body of concerned private citizens intending to transform the Earth in a sustainable, peaceful and life-affirming manner by adopting a range of environmental, scientific, spiritual and political principles and practices, celebrating the global spiritual awakening that is promoting health, acceptance and harmony, recognizing new scientific principles and the existence of new energy technologies, acknowledging the evidence that extraterrestrial life is observing, visiting and residing on Earth, noting the evidence that cetaceans possess high intelligence and communication skills, resolving to protect the biosphere and ensure a sustainable future, recalling the citizen-inspired Earth Charter from 1992, promoting a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice and a culture of peace, recalling the proposed Energy Innovation Act of 2007, seeking to establish a joint Congressional Office of Energy Innovation with a focus on promoting and jump-starting new and unconventional approaches to energy generation, recalling the 2006 Hawaii Declaration of Peaceful Relations with Extraterrestrial Civilizations, promoting world peace and harmonious relations with extraterrestrial civilizations, mindful of Hawaiian indigenous tradition and its unique spirit of aloha, and using a consensual decision-making process among speakers, organisers and participants at the Earth Transformation Conference in Kailua Kona, Hawaii, May 11 to 13, 2007, we have agreed to 1. Recognise that transformation is the wholeness created by right relationships with oneself that extends to other persons, other cultures, other life, our planet, and the larger whole of which we are all part. 2. Affirm faith in the inherent dignity of all people, celebrate diversity. 3. Take personal responsibility for our own transformation to whole, heart-centered, healthy human beings, fully expressing all our inherent potential. 4. Develop awareness of our interconnectedness and interdependence, embracing physical wellness and spiritual development as a means of experiencing higher intelligence in its various manifestations. 5. Affirm the potential of new energy technologies to provide solutions to urgent global environmental and resource depletion issues. 6. Encourage private and public support for development, commercialization, deployment assistance and widespread adoption of these cleaner sources of energy. 7. Promote the fair and equitable distribution of new energy generation technology within nations and among nations. 8. Ensure new energy technologies provide for a transformation from a resource-limited economy to a global abundance economy. 9. Affirm the political sovereignty and self-determination of humanity in relation to extraterrestrial civilizations, and that all sentient beings have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. 10. Ensure transparency and accountability in governance, inclusive participation in decision-making, respect for human rights, public oversight of all government-funded projects involving extraterrestrial life and technology. 11. Demand the immediate release of all evidence possessed by governments and their contractors confirming the presence of extraterrestrial life and accounting of all agreements reached with or concerning extraterrestrial life. The establishment of truth commissions to reveal government-funded actions taken concerning extraterrestrial life and restorative justice for any injured parties. 12. Affirm the natural right of all citizens to have safe and open contact with extraterrestrial visitors and to engage in non-official diplomacy, and affirm the heartfelt intent of humanity to live in peaceful and cooperative relationship with extraterrestrial civilizations. 13. Affirm the cetacea, whales and dolphins, are an ancient race of intelligent sentient beings who have been the friends and helpers of mankind for millennia. 14. Demand an end to whaling and irresponsible fishing practices that kill dolphins and protect marine life from damaging sonar and other destructive technologies. 15. Recognise members of the cetacean nation comprised of dolphins, whales and porpoises are entitled to the same rights and protections as all people. 16. Recognise that all life is interdependent and all forms of life have inherent value regardless of their economic worth to human beings, and so resolve to create an environment friendly to all sentient species. 17. Protect and restore the integrity of Earth's ecological systems with special attention to biological diversity, the natural processes that sustain life, and traditional sacred sites. 18. Promote the reconnection to nature through organic farming and sustainable resource management, showing reverence for the land and waters of our home planet. 19. Cooperate internationally and with extraterrestrial civilizations in promoting Earth, cosmic and life-friendly technologies and encouraging the right use and open availability of these technologies. 20. Adopt patterns of production, consumption and reproduction that show respect and due care for the Earth and that safeguard her regenerative capacities. So this has been a process that all of us have been involved in. So in a sense, we all own this. So it's only right to ask at this stage if anyone objects to anything in this document to the extent that they would not approve it.
You just made a good point, and one that concerned me yesterday when looking at this. We in Hawaii know how special the dolphins and the whales are, but there are a lot of other sentient beings here that I think need to be included if we're going to single out whales and dolphins. That's just my feeling. You know, when you connect to all things, there is no higher or lower.
Well, as I said, from a process of consensus decision making, and that's where we are now. We're really in the process of whether this document as it stands is approvable. And so I know there's some wording people would like to change and revise, and we know that, we're aware of that. But as I said, this is not a question of unanimity in terms of agreeing with everything that is there, but we agree that there is nothing there that we object to. So with that, again, let me ask, anyone object to anything that is there? Okay, so with that, let me then formally move that we as a conference, speakers and participants, adopt this declaration as a conference statement. So all in favour, please stand. I think you can just look around and just give yourselves a clap. Thank you. Well, we'll have now a video that we are going to demonstrate. So did you have...
I have something to say, but I didn't want to interfere.
Well, I actually just in terms
but it is important.
And as I said...
It's important relative to this.
Okay, well, those of you who have already stood up, as I said, this is a process of consensus. It means that we're not, at this point, we cannot do any more revisions. So it's really a question of anything that is objectionable.
Well, I'm not asking for a revision, I'm asking for possible assertion.
John, I think they're going to have to play it over here.
Yeah, no, I said I'm not asking to delete anything, it's just to say.
You want to make a statement? Yes, there's a...
Will someone use the mic? Right here. This has been on my heart. I almost died in September 1997, but through the grace of many divine beings, I'm still here. And one of the things that were brought to my attention was that the
League of Nations and their contribution to the U.S. Constitution. And what lives in the reservations and does not live in our communities right now is the self-sufficiency proclamation that empowers us to be self-sufficient in every facet of our being. And that is part of what is missing. As well as that we were never supposed to function as executive branches, but we were supposed to function as a living tree of life, which the human body is representative of. Thank you.
Well, as a conference, we have given everyone an opportunity to object to anything, and so the rest of the body has approved this. So what we can do is take on board your suggestion so that in any future elaboration of this, we can incorporate what you've said.
I was trying to yesterday, but nobody would acknowledge me.
Hugh, did you in any way? Hugh was the rapporteur, so he took.
No, I was raising my hand and he just didn't acknowledge me. I was in the front.
What's the point of the absence of a reference to native people's wisdom? Is that essentially it? The various native peoples? Or is it the issue of self-sufficiency?
It's self-sufficiency. It was endowed not just to the native people, to all beings.
And maybe I can answer that in how those ideas were instrumental in forming this. First of all, I reviewed the document that where the 7 nations came together, and I noticed that the basis, they had 2 interesting ideas that they brought together. One was, at the beginning of the document, they acknowledged the earth and all life, and that was the foundation for their political document. And secondly, a very interesting idea they had was that of the representatives to their government would be inherited through matrilineal lineages. It was the women who had the right to select their representatives to the councils. So I decided that we were, with our document, by how in this declaration we were bringing in the whole idea of earth restoration, that we were covering the spirit of that acknowledgement of all life. And in fact, we do have a point 16 which it goes beyond the cetacea to acknowledging the importance of a sustainable environment and a friendly environment for all life on Earth. Now, your second point was about the self-sufficiency, and that, to my mind, was implicit in the whole idea of new energy technology. It's one thing to be self-sufficient spiritually and physically and personally. It's another thing to be self-sufficient as a community, as a society. And it's precisely the new energy technology that allows us, if we let it transform our economic structure, that allows us that the experience of self-sufficiency. So this whole conference and this whole document is actually wrapped around the vision that we can not only create a technology that's different, but that we can bring that technology into our social system in a transformative way. So I don't quite understand the objection, because I feel that we've actually got it in there. Maybe not with specific words, but it's the core idea of what our vision of transformation is.
Well, you know, I mean, we need to move ahead.
I just want to say one small thing. I will send you a copy of the proclamation, self-sufficiency proclamation, that is set on many reservations, and then you will see it yourself.
So we can make a note that we will receive a document that we can look at in future. Right, well, so with that, I think what we can do now is show a video that will help us transition to the next presentation by Timothy Wiley. And this video is recently been produced by one of the conference volunteers. It runs for 6 minutes. Now, does anyone have the video? You have it? You're ready to play? Please, go ahead. So this video is